I thought I would start by just letting you guys know kind of what I do. I haven't had a chance to work with y'all very much, and I thought it might be helpful for you to know. I do business development at Sparkbox, which is essentially meaning I do sales at Sparkbox. So I'm out talking to people who might be a good fit for us and trying to figure out what we could do to help them, how much it would cost, that sort of thing. And I'm about 25 years into my career right now. I've got about 12 of that is business development. I've been here for only about 9 months, but I've changed jobs a lot. So what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is some based on my experience with doing business development, and some based on my experience, just my own work and how I've sort of navigated some of this on my own. And Lindsay might jump in and share some of her experiences too. And, you know, Patrick, you're welcome to do the same as long as you're here, because I feel like this is something that everybody has stories about after a certain point, like, and maybe you guys already do too. Like there are all sorts of points in your career where you need to sort of stake out what you want and what you get. So that starts early and never really stops. So here we go. Okay. So there's two things I wanted you guys to just take away from today. If we didn't get anything else done, I hope that you would remember two things. Number one is that it's fine to talk about money. I was raised in a way in my own family where that is not a thing that we talk about. And it's not really a thing that you talk about with friends a lot. It's just a little bit of a taboo topic. But at work, it shouldn't be. You don't need to feel like you're tiptoeing around that issue. Or feel uncomfortable saying, you know, asking for what you need, or just talking about sort of the way things are going to work. It's completely fine and expected. So it almost, and we'll talk more about this, if you don't do it, it almost reflects badly on you not to be willing to have those conversations, because it's just part of your professional life. And then the other thing I want to make sure that y'all take away from this, hopefully, is that you have a lot of power in a negotiation. It sometimes feels like when you're just starting out that you just want a job, right? Like you just want someone to pay you for the work that you've learned to do. And that is a great and important and exciting step. But every time you're in a negotiation about salary or about anything else with potentially an employer, you have a lot of control there too. You have as much to choose as they do. So just keep that in your mind as you think about what might be a right fit, because it needs to be a right fit in both directions. You need to be the right person for them, and they need to be the right company for you. And so negotiating is all about sort of finding that match, not just how much money can you get, not just what can I do to make them hire me tomorrow, but, you know, really making sure that what you're offering and what they're needing align really well together. So why should you negotiate? There's a couple of things. There's no reason not to. There's no reason for them to pay you more if you don't ask them to. Any company is going to try to get the best value for their company. That's their job. But your job is to make sure that it works for you too. So, you know, sort of speak up for your end of that. The other thing that can happen, and there are sort of key points in your career where you can negotiate or not, and it has a really lasting impact. And when you start a new job, that's your chance to kind of set where you are on a salary scale and in your professional development and your life, in your professional life. And you don't get to do that all the time. You get to do it a few times, and it really has a bigger impact when you're just starting out. So these next few opportunities that you have are really important. And Lindsay has an example that she shared with me that's in here. And we've changed it so it's Lindsay and Katie. Katie's the smart one here. So, and Lindsay's a little bit lackadaisical. Let's see how she does. So let's just say that there are two candidates, both offered the same salary. One doesn't negotiate, Lindsay, and one does. It's not that much money at first. It's not that big of a difference at first. When you break down that kind of salary into what you get every couple of weeks, it's not a huge difference, but it adds up. So let's say that I continue to negotiate over time. So I've started higher, and every time there's an opportunity for an increase, I'm negotiating. Lindsay, try to be a good team player, just rolls with it. That over time means that I'm making quite a bit more money than Lindsay. And even though that little starting amount didn't seem like that much, this seems like quite a bit. And then the next time, if Lindsay changes jobs, or excuse me, if I change jobs, I'm starting from a different point. So I'm going to have that much more than Lindsay would per year. And then I'm going to negotiate up farther when I have an opportunity to make a jump. So while it's one conversation that might feel a little bit uncomfortable, it's one conversation that you have, or one conversation that you have annually, that really can have an impact on your income over the course of your life. It changes what you can invest in. It changes what you might do with your free time. It is worth being a little bit uncomfortable for this moment in your interview process or in your review process, if it's going to benefit you in the long run, which it will.
Yeah, and I had one other thing about those scenarios to say. I know Josiah would probably also say this, and I think I ran it by him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, make sure to remind them too. Like, not only is Katie, in that one slide, just making $9,000 more than I am by year 5, or 14,000 more by year 10, but like, if you're putting stuff into savings, you're also accruing interest on whatever you're saving. So Katie's got a lot more in the bank than I do, just by negotiating or like putting it in her like 401k or IRA. Like, you're making a lot more with all of that as well. And this scenario also accounts for, even if we're not negotiating, we're both getting 2% increases, which is, some companies do it, some companies don't. It's like a cost of living increase. So that's just something to note. Thank you.
So I mentioned earlier that it's okay to negotiate, it's okay to talk about money. And I want to stress that in some cases, it's not just okay, it's expected. It's as if you go into a market where it's a kind of a bartering system and just sort of take everyone's first offer. The first offer is not necessarily what they really meant to do. They were just jumping off. So negotiating, having those sometimes hard conversations actually demonstrates your business acumen too. Like, you're demonstrating to people that you're working with, or that you're hoping to work with, that you understand your value, you understand their needs, you're thinking of yourself as an asset to them, which hopefully you are. That's why this is the job that you're applying for. So don't, know that this is something that is expected by them, and knowing your value makes you a better candidate. So if you're in there saying, I'd like this for these reasons, you're also demonstrating your awareness of their business, about their goals, the things that you add to their success potentially. And it's important that they understand that you see yourself in that context. It makes you better for this job if you can do that. And then also just remember that money is only part of it. And it's an important part. None of us are kind of hobbyists here. Like, we're all, every one of us is here to earn money. But there are a lot of other things that weigh into the quality of your life as well. And I know that you all know that. I feel like that's been kind of highlighted this year, in particular, sort of the things like the PTO policies that you would have access to, the flexibility that you might need in other ways to live the life that you want, family planning and time off, and education, professional development. All of those are things that should factor into your thinking as well. You can negotiate on any of that. So you can definitely look for the salary you want, but you can also look for sort of the package that you want. And if somebody is not quite able to pay you what you feel like is right, this is a thing that you can sort of add in also, to say, like, you can't make that salary work right now. You'll try to get me there in the next 18 months. Can we talk about additional vacation time, or, something like that, that really makes it a good fit for you. So keep that in your mind as well. So how to negotiate? I think the first thing to do is do your research, understand where where you should fall. In a particular company, in a particular industry, in a geographic market, this is an area where I think y'all have different resources probably available to you than I have, because I do a different kind of work. And Lindsay is going to touch on some of the ways that you can go about sort of researching this particular job that you're looking at.
I can mention a couple of those resources now. So for web development jobs, because people, like, this is an industry where people don't stay for a long time. Like my dad is still at the same job he's worked his entire life. Like, that's not really the way that web development works. But because people change jobs so often, there's a lot of information on salaries and at different companies and different roles on the web. So again, just the way that we were kind of researching jobs on the Google platform, like 2 sessions ago on the Google job board, and Patrick and I mentioned, like, look for different words, keywords, because we call ourselves so many different things in different places. So engineer, for some reason, if you look up software engineer, they tend to have higher paying salaries on web platforms. So you could use that to your benefit to, like, skew to the higher end of things. If you look up web developer, they're generally, like, probably a good average. Look up front end engineer, back end, use all of those different words, because you'll get different salaries depending on what you type in. So be aware of that. You can also search for, like, junior at some platforms. So I'm going to send a list in the email at the end, but Indeed is a good website to look at. Salary.com. Glassdoor is really good. So I'll send all of these. Angel List. And then there's a couple others that I'll include as well. But those are all really good places to learn what the salary range is, and look at, especially like Glassdoor has years of experience. That's helpful. But take everything with a grain of salt. So, if you're looking in Ohio for a job in Ohio, look for, 0 to 5 years of experience, and see what junior people are getting paid, because you probably shouldn't aim for that senior salary quite yet. But it's good to be aware of what that is. And depending on the company, maybe they can pay you that, but you don't really know. So that's some ways to do research. And if you're applying to a company in California, but you're going to be working in Ohio, I think you can still try to apply for that California range of salary, if you agree, Katie, because I think they can pay it.
Yeah, they do. And I think a lot of I live in Vermont, so I've done this. I don't apply for jobs in Vermont. I've never had a job in Vermont, but I've never said, like, I'd like to be judged on a Vermont scale. Because it just, there aren't jobs in Vermont and probably no scale. So it makes sense to sort of fall into their buckets, I think. And I think, as you're doing this, also think about things beyond salary, which we've already talked about a little bit. It's a package that you're going to be offered. And I've had a lot of conversations in my career where I've said, I've been working remotely since 2002. And so at that time, it wasn't very common. And early on, there were negotiations where I accepted something different because I was asking them to take a risk on letting me work from home or outside an office or something like that. That's probably not true now. Plenty of people work from home, but I was accepting some trade-offs because of what I wanted for myself beyond just salary. So think about what that is for you and for a particular job. And then also, as you're doing this, I suggest that you think about as you're learning about a particular company and as you're exploring what this job might be, also be thinking about why you're a good fit for it, because you don't just want to ask, you want to earn it. You want to be able to say, this is why you should pay me more. This is what I can offer. This is, how I can contribute to your team. So as you're doing your research, be thinking about your side of that too. You're not just asking, you're also saying, this is what I offer you. This is what I bring. That's part of that balance that we talked about earlier in terms of you having some power too. So you need to be able to demonstrate why you should get what you're asking for. Do you guys have any questions about any of that so far?
No.
Okay.
A question, not necessarily about that, but kind of similar. So earlier you mentioned about like negotiating versus not negotiating and how that establishes your base for like, the rest of your career. So I know that there's different, like I guess, laws in certain states about your potential employer asking what your current salary is, and unless you disclose that, you can't leverage that to, kind of like keep climbing. So at what point and in what format do you disclose that information and to kind of use it to your advantage?
Lindsay and I just talked about this. Actually, you don't have to disclose that. And we can talk about some ways to get around that. I think that it's disarming sometimes for someone to say, what do you make? And you're like, I don't know how to answer that question except for telling you what I make, but you don't have to do. You're not required to do that. So it's a good idea and I think that we actually have something about this in a couple of slides, but it's a good idea to be prepared for that question and be ready to respond to it in another way. You can say a range. You can say, someone could say to you, what are you making now? And you could say, I'm looking for this. You don't have to say, this is what I'm making now. And I think that, I don't know if it's legal for them to ask or not. Lindsay, you might know, but I know that you're not required to tell them.
It's definitely depending on the state, but I forget if I looked it up for Pennsylvania. I did have somebody ask me this and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know if it was not a question they were supposed to ask. So it'd be good to look that up. But I think, Louise, are you also saying you want to use that as like I had this salary and like I expect to make more than that? Was that kind of where you were coming from?
Not kind of, right? So I know when you move into, because I've moved internally before, right? And there's like like I transferred to a different position that was a lot higher paying, but I got the lower end of that because they know what I make. It's the same company. So they just gave me the standard percentage bump. But in another company, like when you go somewhere else, they don't have that kind of information. But yeah, I guess to answer your question is kind of like to be able to demonstrate, hey, I was worth certain thousands of dollars to this company. You're offering me 15K less. Like that's, trying to use that to your advantage.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And we're actually going to talk about some different sort of tactics to get into this negotiation conversation. So would you mind if we hold it and then come back and see if we've answered your question in a few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
One quick, and this is maybe kind of a funny way of getting out of that question that I've actually used because I had heard it from somebody else, was if somebody asks like, oh, what are you making now? I've actually responded with, what is this job paying? What is your range for this position? Like countering it with like another question back to them, which is a little cheeky, but like also it's just like, it kind of gets you out of it and catches them
A little bit
and puts
off
the
guard.
onus on them. So
that I think there are a number of ways you can change the subject or, just put it back where you want it to be.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. The next thing we wanted to touch on was just sort of knowing your number. So you don't have to say what it is. In fact, don't, and we'll talk about that. But you should know what the salary that you're looking for is, or what the package that you're looking for is. And it's not always the same thing. So for example, if somebody is offering you a dream job and you would sell your kidney to get this job, it's going to be a different number than something where, that it's a good fit, but not like your destiny or something like that. Your number might be a little bit higher. It might take more to make you move if you're looking for a job like that. So know what your number is for survival. Know how this particular job you're looking at influences that number. Are you going to insist on going a little higher because it's going to take a little bit more to motivate you to make this change. And also, keep in mind those other benefits too. So know when you're going into a discussion what your number should be, but try not to say it out loud yet. People will ask you, and a lot of times job application forms and automated things that you have to fill out will ask you to put something in. Try not to give it out. It takes some power away from you, because you've basically told them already what you'll accept. And if it is way less than they might have paid you, they don't have any reason to pay you that now. It's going to be hard for you to change, to sort of reset yourself in the conversation if you've said, I would like to make $10, and they had already been planning on paying you 15 or something like that. So try not to go first if you can. And Patrick gave a good example of, sort of pressing them. If you're pressed, you can give a range. And this is the same sort of thing that we do in business development. People also will call me and say, I think I'd like something like X or Y as a project. How much does that cost? And I don't like to say yet, because we don't know enough to say yet. And I'm not trying to limit our ability to negotiate with them by just throwing out a number before we really know anything. But if I have to, I'll say it would be something in the range of $50,000 to $100,000 or something like that. It's a good way to sort of clear things with them a little bit. If I give a range and it's twice what they had been thinking, then it's probably not a good fit, and we may as well know that. It's better for them and for us to know. And it still leaves you some wiggle room. So if you have to give a number, give a range, and make sure that it doesn't go below your minimum. Because if it does, if you know what sort of the lowest you can go is, and it's already not good for them, then this isn't going to be a productive conversation. So you can do that if you need to. I also find it really helpful in a negotiation process, and this is true personally and true in my work at Sparkbox too, is that it's better to talk about money once they've already decided they want to hire you. So there's going to be a point in this process that you're going through where you're a stranger. You've come in, or maybe you've been referred, but they don't know you. They don't have any reason to want you more than they want the other 10 people that are applying for this job. And so if you're talking about money at that stage, there's nothing really that differentiates you. As you go through this discussion with them, you're asking good questions, you're super prepared, you've got great examples to show them, things like that. They're wanting you more and more. And so once you get them to a place where they basically have had a secret conversation where like, this one, we should hire this one, that's a good time to talk about money, because they don't want to go through all that again. They've they're sort of all in on you a little bit, and you've got more power by then. You've got more power once they see you as an individual with value, and you're more likely to be able to get them to move in the places that you might need them to. Talked about this one already. You don't have to say your salary. Do ask about benefits and ask about opportunities for growth. Benefits because that's what you need to know, and opportunities for growth because you want them to know that that's your mindset. You want them to know that you're ready to do the work that it takes to be great at this job. So everything that you're asking, the questions that you ask, the places that you spend time in these conversations, you're asking them for information, but by the nature of the questions you're asking, you're telling them what's important to you as well. So let that sort of guide your questions about what else you can expect from being employed with this person. Any other questions about numbers? I think that the thing I might not have been clear about is like sort of dancing around a little bit even here. Like eventually you're going to have to, they're going to make you an offer. It might be a little bit less. Go back and ask for a little bit more if you want to, or ask for something different if you need to. You're not required because you've had all these conversations, but you know, at the end of the day, there's going to be an offer and perhaps a counteroffer. And you should feel really comfortable with that. Be respectful of them. If you're really interested in this job and you passionately want to take it, but you need more, say that. Say, I'm passionately interested in contributing to this team. I really think I have a lot to offer and I would love to be a part of it, but I need this. And I think that your willingness to be enthusiastic and kind of clear about what you want and also like what you need to get paid to do that, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It really tells them something about who you are and how you handle yourself professionally. And again, if it's a no, okay, you know, you need to ask for what you need, even at the risk of this not being the right fit for you, which is very scary to do, especially in job markets that are tough, especially when maybe you don't have anything else in the hopper right now. Like, you know, we're not always in some sort of a bidding war or something like that. It can be hard to let one go by, but you have to sometimes if you just don't feel like it's going to be the right fit for you.
Just like another additional point too, and Katie, this might be something that you're going to cover, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it while it was fresh in my mind. I feel like when they make an offer, almost everything is on the table to be negotiated, not just money, but like vacation time, other benefits that they could offer to you. I haven't ever done that, but I wish that I would have done that. Because I have concrete examples of other people who I've been friendly with at previous jobs who have done that, especially like more vacation time. Because I feel like, I don't know, that might be just an easy thing that they'd be like, oh, you just want 1 or 2 more weeks extra vacation? Sure, yeah, like we want you, we'll give you that. We'll find a way to make it work. My partner Tracy did that when she started her new job. She asked for more vacation time and they were like, oh yeah. And I was like, why didn't I do this before? So yeah, I feel like almost anything could be on the table within reason, but like, you know, so if it's not necessarily a thing where like they can offer you more money, maybe they can offer you something else. So just keep that in mind.
I think that's really, really true and a good point. That's the kind of thing that I've asked for a lot in my career. Vacation time, flexibility. There was a time like when my son was a baby, I didn't really even care about the money. I cared how much I could flex my schedule during the day while he was still a baby. And that mattered to me for a few years, and then other things mattered to me more. And you'll have decided what you need. And you can ask for anything, really. In my experience, working with really large companies, they are a little bit stricter, which is actually why I stopped working for really large companies, because they just can't, they have to set policies that are also precedents. And so they can't necessarily do for you what they wouldn't do for everyone else. It might be a little stricter, and there's no reason why you can't ask for that. So if someone says, this is as we can go on the salary, you can say, can you talk to me about other places we might be able to find some flexibility? So if it's a small company that can't pay you as much, but they can give you more vacation time with ease, then you decide if that's a good fit for you, or flip it. If it's a really big company and they can pay you a little bit more, but they're not willing to wiggle on some of the PTO or things like that, again, you'll decide whether that's going to be a good fit for you. But it never hurts to ask. You can always ask, and people know what's set in stone and what's not.
I'd like to say something about numbers too that I found helpful in finding the numbers that work well for you. I think it's 4 steps that I take. So there's the number that I calculate all my living expenses, the things that I want to do with my life. And that's not just like rent and groceries. That's also how much I want to put towards, my savings, my future, vacations that I might want to take, finding that number, that minimum number of what I need to live. And then, seeing how I feel about that number. So even if it comes out to like 45,000, but I decide I'd really feel more comfortable with 50,000, that's my minimum number. That is the number that I absolutely will not accept a job if it goes below. Then you have your ideal number. So the number that you'd like to make, and then your reach number, the one that's a little bit more of a splurge kind of for you. And generally the number that I ask for is somewhere between that ideal and the reach number, because it is a negotiation and I'll go back and forth. So for example, if the number that I'd really like to make is $5 and my reach is $10, I might ask for $7, knowing that I'll probably get back down to $5. So then, I'm expecting it to be a back and forth, and for us to both kind of compromise, but it's not necessarily as much of a compromise for me, because the number that I actually wanted to get is something that I had in mind and requested a bit more than that. So I landed in the exact place that I wanted to be.
I love it when you can land in the exact place you want to be.
Yes.
I'm thinking about this from y'all's perspective of, where you are in your careers right now, and, where we are in the economy right now, and just, everything that's going on. And it's a little bit of a tough spot, but, and I know that you may need to adjust all this based on where you are in your own lives. Sometimes you're going to go with your bare minimum number if you don't have a job right now. You've got to take care of your responsibilities, and but don't be discouraged if that has to happen at one point or another. I think I would love to always get the reach, but I think we've all been in positions. I mean, I can think of a couple of times where I've been like, I have got to get out of this place. And what was a priority for me then wasn't anything to do with a new job. It was a priority for me to leave my old one, or it was a priority to get my first one, or something like that. So, take all of this with a grain of salt. You still need to do what you need to do in your lives, to sort of keep yourselves safe and set yourself up for success. Hopefully you have an idea of what your own value is, and how to offer that. And I'm confident that you're going to find people who want to take advantage of it. But I also want to be mindful that sometimes I feel like when you're hearing stuff like this and you're feeling like you're in a position of vulnerability, it's hard to say like, I'd turn this down, when what you really want is to be secure in your space. So you'll fit all of this to meet the needs that you have when you have them throughout your career. But do not underestimate your value.
And I want to say one last thing is first web development job is the hardest to get. I think this is probably the same of any industry, but for web development, I've seen this with my friends, with myself coming in with no experience. It's really hard to get that first job. And once you do, it's almost smooth sailing. I've never had such a hard experience again applying for jobs or finding jobs since then, because people in the industry, you make connections, and also you have the experience and people accept it. It's just, it seems to be so much easier to get that next job. So that first hurdle of the first web development job is hard, but once you have it, that experience is golden. Like, it'll really, really help you.
Yeah, I can't speak to that from a web development standpoint, but I think that that's been my experience with positions in other areas as well. And I think it's that more, you have experience, you can prove it, and you've learned a lot, you've gained confidence as well in the way you present what you have to offer. So it's exciting, but I mean, it's nice. And I think that this graph actually kind of speaks to that there's going to be a time of really rapid learning and rapid growth in your career. People also tend to change jobs more early in their career, which is fine. It's fine for you to do that. So, you can be thinking about you're, for each position that you're considering, you can be thinking about what your potential for growth is there, how it will be recognized, how it will be compensated, whether people tend to turn over at this company really quickly. And if so, what does that mean for you? So particularly over the sort of the early stage in your career, I think it's good to be thinking of the steps that will get you up to where you want to be. There's just a ton of movement that happens usually early on. And that doesn't always mean changing companies, but it often does mean there's a lot of change in your career, either internally or through movement. Lindsay, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Nope, that's great.
Okay. So if you ask and you get turned down, that sucks, but it could happen. And it's okay to ask why. And I always ask why during new business negotiations as well. If we don't win, I always want to know, what could I have done differently? What did I sort of fail? What case did I fail to make? Because I think we're going to be a good fit. How did I not convince you that we were going to be a good fit? And some people might just say, like, we had another candidate, we just moved forward. Or they might say, we felt you lacked this one skill. But you're always going to be able to learn something from that. So if you can get people to talk to you, that's great. And you have nothing to lose at that point, right? Like they didn't hire you. That's fine. But you can gain something from that. And in some ways, because there is no more risk involved, it should be easier to have that conversation. And, just remember, there are lots of ways, lots of reasons that something might not align. And that can be your decision just as easily as it can be theirs. You're not obligated. It's like you don't have to go out on a date with everyone who asks you. Like, you're just not obligated to everything doesn't always work out. So some tricks. We've talked about just being confident in what you bring. Don't be afraid to talk about money. Don't be shy about it. Don't feel like you have to fill every quiet moment. Patrick gave a good example of people asking you a question, then you sort of turning it back around. The other thing, and I'm like this, I do fill spaces in conversations often, sometimes in really ridiculous ways. And in this case, you just don't have to do that. If you're asked a question and you give the answer, you give a range. Let's say they ask you what you're making. You're like, I'm looking for a range in this. Let it sit out there for a minute. They might be waiting for you to get more specific or answer the original question. Go ahead and let them sit too. Let them carry on. That's fine. Say the number back to them. Just sort of use their language as you can. Negotiate when people are in a good mood, which is later in the week. I don't know, power pose. Lindsay, that's one from you. Do you want to?
Yeah, this is silly, but the power pose is like, I don't know if any of you watch Grey's Anatomy either, but they do this on Grey's Anatomy. But there's some psychology research that I don't know if it's to be believed or not, but hey, what the heck? So you can stand like a Superman, basically, with your arms on your hips, and just like you just this is supposed to make you feel powerful. So if you are going into an interview, like, you don't probably want to do this in the waiting area, but like,
or you do make that statement.
Yeah. If you're in a room alone and the door is closed, you're waiting for it to happen. You can do this for a second. It's supposed to like build up your confidence. And it's like, I think it's the same type of thing as like, if you smile, even if you're not feeling well, like, it does supposedly release things in your brain to make you feel a little bit happier. So I think it's the same kind of like, if you just need that extra boost of confidence, like, make your power pose, and like, maybe that will help you before you go in.
Yeah. Another thing I didn't write down, but that comes to mind is that role playing is super annoying. And whenever I'm made to do it, I'm very irritated that someone's making me do it. But it's not a bad idea to practice this. So if there's someone that you trust to just go through the exercise with you, let them ask you hard questions, and then practice the silence thing, practice not answering questions directly that you don't have to answer directly, and just let yourself get accustomed to the language that you want to use. You can look up hard interview questions on the interwebs, and it will scare the pants off you, because some people, it's like they want to make this painful, but there are also some very realistic questions that you might get asked that might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but are perfectly within bounds. So if you have a sense of what that is, and I think some sites like Glassdoor actually give away some of what the interview questions for a particular employer have been. Don't just read them, like practice saying that out loud, because it can make a huge difference when it comes time to feel at ease and feel a sense of control when you're in the room there too. Also, this is the last one that I can think of. More and more people are having calls like this where you're actually able to see the person. Always do that if you can, because all of what we're doing is kind of, a lot of what we've talked about is kind of feeling your way through the conversation, and it's much harder to do that if you can't see the person's face. Silence on a phone sounds a lot harder to deal with than silence when you can clearly see that the interviewer is taking notes or something like that. There's a reason for the pause that you're hearing, and it's not because you just stepped it up. So if you can make sure that you can see, particularly if you're doing this at a time like now when you're not likely to be in the office, making sure that you have video turn on, and hopefully they do too, will help you, I think, just feel more human about the whole thing. This is a lot. This is a lot of information, y'all. Do you have any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
And we touched on this a bit, but I've had recruiters or like interviewers early in the process ask me about my salary expectations. And I was kind of wondering what a good answer to that would be.
Theoretically, I'd say I'm looking for something in the range of X to X. There's a thing in biz dev that we talk about getting to the know early, and getting to the know essentially means go ahead and find out what the red flags are. So if someone calls me and is wanting to work with Sparkbox and they need their project to be complete in 2 weeks for $1,000 or whatever, maybe it's not a good fit. I'd like to know that sooner than later. I don't want to have gotten a bunch of other people involved. I don't want to have invested a lot of my time in it. So we think about and talk about sort of getting to the know early. If you have to give a range, then that helps you do that. But I think it can be a big range. I don't think you have to, it's not like a $5,000 range. I think it can be like a $40,000 range or more, because you're not actually trying to give them your number. You're just trying to give them sort of a sense of where you are and what your expectations are a little bit. So if you have to say that, and you don't feel comfortable trying something like Patrick just said, which is to say, like, you tell me, I think you can leave yourself as much space as you can, and don't bring the lower part of that down to below what you'd be comfortable with. Because if you say the bottom is here, but your bottom is here, then this is a space that there can be some miscommunication and it's not productive. So if you're going to say it, don't say anything under what you'd actually take.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I had one other thing I wanted to bring up, which is when you are negotiating or when you're getting to that process of like starting to talk to someone about numbers, or maybe they say, this is what we want to hire you at, and then you start the negotiation process. One other thing to ask is the raise cycle, or you could call it like professional growth cycle there, because you want to know, is this company, maybe this company gives raises every 6 months. That can factor into your decision of how you negotiate. do they only give raises every 5 years? That's really good to know, because you're going to be stuck with the salary for a long time if you stay there. That was the only thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned, because that was something I had never thought to ask before.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And I would add to that as you're doing that, I would recommend that you frame it in terms of not how, like, when will you pay me more, but like, how will I earn more? Like how do I, what is the process? What will your expectations be of me within that raise flow? And, how do you prove it? Like, just basically, like, how do you get good? So that's the same question, really, but you're putting it in terms of your contribution, which they're going to like to hear. And the other thing along those same lines is sometimes people will say, I don't actually know if this is true with developers specifically, but I have often heard people say, like, it's this, but there's a bonus structure. Like, and so we give bonuses or whatever. If that's part of it, you should understand that bonus is just a bonus. You should assume you're not going to get it. Even if people are like, we give out bonuses every year in December, it's not part of your salary. So you can't count on it being there. It should not be part of your number. Like, if it takes the bonus to get to your bottom, just assume that you won't. And if you get a bonus, that's nice. That's why it's called that. But it should not be your rent, because it's just, this isn't another thing that's true this year. You can clearly see that unexpected things happen, and they happen to big and small businesses, and no one can see it coming. So the bonus, I like the idea, but I think that gets people in trouble sometimes if they have made that part of what they really, really need. What else?
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Yeah, I also don't have any questions.
Okay. Go get them, y'all.
Any last advice from Patrick and Lena? I'll just see if y'all have anything.
I'll let Lena go first.
No, Lena, but it's a good picture. Oh, wait, there she is.
Thank you. I can't think of anything else to add.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add is I know sometimes this process can feel like a game, and the only thing I can say is keep your head up and don't let it get discouraging. Sometimes it can feel like fighting an uphill battle, but yeah, just keep your head up, stay positive about it, and really try to take away good things from both good experiences and bad experiences, because that's the way that you'll grow and get more comfortable with this whole process, and it won't feel like so much of a game after a period of time. And I say that as somebody who's like a very extroverted person, but like I definitely clam up in these types of situations. I get nervous in these types of situations, but yeah, just try to remain positive, and feel free to lean on any of us in that external channel that I mentioned to you, which I'll send out a DM in a couple of minutes. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Lena, go ahead.
Oh, I did think of one more thing, and this was really strange to me, but I just want to surface it because it was really weird and it caught me off guard. When I was last looking for a job, Patrick, that thing that you said about feeling like a game, it really can. And I had some experiences that felt almost like the way dating can, in a sense, and people who want to play games with you in that kind of way that's just really, really strange. And so I want to remind you, kind of echoing something that Katie said earlier about how you're interviewing the company just as much as they are interviewing you. And if you notice red flags or things that don't feel right, or somebody that feels like they want to make you work too hard for it, those are concerns that you can just take yourself out of the game. Even if you're still looking for a job and you really need a job, hopefully you feel empowered to say, actually, I've decided to move in a different direction, even if that different direction is just away from being a candidate for this job. If you see anything that feels really weird or red flaggy, I hope that you feel empowered, no matter the salary or the need or anything, to just say, this doesn't feel right and I'm going to back out of consideration.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for attending the final Job Preparedness Workshop session. I hope you feel empowered, educated, and prepared to apply for jobs in the web industry now. The most important theme of this workshop has been that you are interviewing a company as much as they are interviewing you. So remember to do your homework, ask questions, and know what you are worth, and you'll find a job that is right for you. If you want an overview of everything we covered in this workshop, feel free to check out my article on the Foundry called How to Apply for Web Development Jobs on csparkbox.com/foundry, or refer back to any of the videos in this playlist. Good luck, and thank you for your time.